Hi, I'm Morgan, and today I am not where I'm supposed to be. Recently, I've had a lot of problems with lighting my videos, mostly because I live in Scotland and our daylight isn't very good. It's supposed to be summer, but sometimes it's still dull and overcast, and I film at the back of my house, so I have a little bit of light, but not too much, and my camera just isn't having it. So today I am recording in a different place in my room and on my phone, so please bear with me for weird technical changes. This is just how it be. Anyway, this is one of my videos for June 2020, or Pride Month. I already recorded this and I had my lovely rainbow jumper on and like other rainbow things, but it was horrible. The lighting was terrible, so I'm just gonna have to redo it. Although I do have some rainbow earrings on, so I am representing. And in this video, I'm just going to be giving you some of my recommendations for some queer book recs. Now, these are all books that I have personally read because I don't feel comfortable recommending books that I haven't read because it could contain something that I personally don't like. It could contain bad representation and I wouldn't know, and I'd be recommending you something that could be triggering or traumatic or, in all honesty, just not something that you want to read. So this is my list of queer books that I have read and enjoyed. First up is a book I read recently, and that is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is a contemporary romance with a gay and bi main character, and it focuses mostly on a male-male romance. There is also at least one bisexual side character, but I can't really remember if there are any other queer characters. I was too busy focused on the adorable relationship. And this is a book you've probably heard of. It's really popular on BookTube, and it is an enemies to lovers story about one of the princes of England, not the actual princes obviously, and the son of the President of the United States. It's modern and dramatic, and if you are a fan fiction fan, this is definitely one for you. Next on my list is Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda and Leah on the Offbeat, both by Becky Albertalli. Albertalli? As we have established, I can't pronounce her name. These two books are set in the same universe and follow the same group of characters. Both are YA novels about teenagers coming to terms with themselves and figuring out how they fit into the world. Simon Versus is a male-male romance with two gay characters, and Leah on the Offbeat has a female-female romance where both are bisexual, I believe. At least one of them uses a label, but the other character is more questioning and coming to understand her sexuality. These are really cute, really quick reads, and they do coming of age well, because the characters do deal with hardships and challenges, but overall there's a happy ending. Next on the list is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers. Those are the first and the third books in the series, and I'm mentioning these because I remember explicit rep in them. I can't remember if there's rep in the second book, but the second book is really good and I would recommend it. This is a science fiction series with an interspecies female-female romance in the first novel and a human female-female romance in the third novel. And while these aren't romance books, the relationships are part of the plot and are normalised. So if you want to read about queer space women, check them out. Next on my list is Carol, or The Price of Salt by Patricia Highsmith. Oh, you can see my Carol. That kind of tells you everything, doesn't it? Now, Carol is kind of a controversial, problematic one because there is a rather significant age gap. But what you have to remember is this is a 50s lesbian pulp novel. You know, there's gonna be some issues with it. But overall, I think it's a classic read. I think it's enjoyable, and it does deal with the issues women would have put up with in that time period while still allowing them to have this real and meaningful relationship. There's some lovely passages in there that truly speak to the experience as a queer person, or specifically as a queer woman. So I would keep in mind the time period and the age gap, but other than that, I would recommend. Next on my list is Annie on My Mind by Nancy Garden. I think it's her anyway. That may be the incorrect name, but the book is called Annie on My Mind. This is a female-female romance about two teenage girls who fall in love and are coming to a turning point in their lives as they are about to go to college. It's definitely a good coming-of-age novel, especially for queer people who are coming to understand themselves and realise that the way they feel is actually okay. I really enjoyed this book. I cried on the train while I was reading it, so you know, maybe don't read it in public, but I really enjoyed it and I thought the relationship was really sweet and honestly quite relatable. However, the two main characters are outed against their will at a certain point in the novel, so just a warning, if that's not something you enjoy reading, I'd skip this one. Next on my list is Her Body and Other Parties by Carmen Maria Machado. I am butchering names today. This book is a short story collection that focuses on female-driven stories, many of which focus on a female-female romance. A lot of the stories are creepy and kind of sci-fi-esque and borderline horror. They're really unique and really interesting. And a lot of the metaphors and the metaphorical way the stories are written are looking at the experience of being a woman. Next on my list is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. This is another one you have probably heard of. It is a graphic novel series about two boys, Nick and Charlie, who meet in high school and fall for each other. It is a male-male romance with a gay and bisexual main character. There are also a lot of other queer side characters. There is a trans girl in their friendship group and a female-female side romance. And I believe there might be other rep because it is linked to Alice Oseman's other books, but I haven't read any of her stuff. I've only read Heartstopper, so I can't tell you that. Heartstopper is available in physical copies, but you can also find it on Alice Oseman's Tumblr, specifically for the series. Personally, I've been reading it on her Tumblr, but I am going to buy some copies probably once all of this is over and I can actually go into a bookshop. I'll just go and buy like the 3 editions that are out. It's a really sweet story that deals with some serious real life things like mental health and family issues, as well as being just a sweet teen romance. Next on my list is Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is a male-male romance. It focuses on Achilles and Patroclus, I can never pronounce his name, who are figures from Greek myths, specifically in relation to Achilles' role in the Trojan War. Now this is a sad book. It has a sad but hopeful ending, but it is very popular for a reason and I love it. Next on my list is Carmilla by J. Sheridan LeFanu. I don't know. It's something like that. Now this is a classic work, so I wouldn't say it's explicit rep, but the relationship between the vampire and the main character is how we say homoerotic subtext. It has queer-coded vampires. It's a classic. I loved it. There's also a modern retelling that is available actually here on YouTube. It's a web series and they have their own book, which is why I'm mentioning it. There is a book of the series or of the movie. I haven't read the book, but I've seen the series, so that's why I'm just throwing that in there with original Carmilla. Next on my list is Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson. This has a lesbian main character who is coming to terms with her sexuality and realising that she can decide her own fate in her own life. There is a minor female-female romance, but that's not the main focus of the novel. The main focus is the main character beginning to understand herself and decide on her place in the world. Next is Crush by Richard Sicken. Sicken? I'm struggling, I really am. This is a collection of poetry that focuses a lot on the gay male experience, but overall I would say it's probably quite relatable to most queer people, and it's just overall really good poetry about relationships that don't quite work how they should. Next is, of course, I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. This is one of my favourite books, and it wouldn't be a queer rec list if I didn't mention it. It follows a set of twins in 2 different time periods as they come of age and deal with their own sexuality, one of whom is gay and is coming to terms with that, and the other is a young woman who is dealing with sexualization as she grows into her mature body. Can't really describe it any other way. It's like, I have tits now. Men, look at me. Ugh. There is a slight male-male romance. It's actually very sweet, and there is a happy ending. I'm just saying that because when I read it for the first time I had to stop reading it halfway through because it broke my heart and I felt very seen. So Jandy Nelson uses very flowery language, so if you're not into overly poetic novels, maybe this isn't for you, but it is one of my faves. Next on my list is Trumpet by Jackie Kay. This is one that I had to read for university and I found quite, I was about to say eye-opening, but I don't think that's the best way to describe it. It focuses on a transgender trumpet player after his death and people finding out about his status as a trans person and how this affects the way some people see him, but also how other people, it doesn't change their view whatsoever. Now, this isn't Own Voices, so I can't say how accurate it is or whether or not there is anything that may be offensive or incorrect. But as a cis person, I did find it useful to read and reflect on my own opinions and my own biases and to really think about how I look at gender and things like that. So I don't necessarily know if it's the best for representation, but it was an interesting and thought-provoking book, which is why it's on this list. Next on the list is The Dark Wife by Sarah Diemer? I'm not having a good time with these names today. This is a female-female romance and a retelling of the myth of Persephone and Hades. It's dark, it's mythological, it's gay. What more could you ask for? I also believe that Sarah Diemer, sorry, I apologise Sarah. I believe that she's written some other queer books. I think it's mostly female-female romance, but I haven't read any of them. But if you're looking for some, you know, go look her up. She has a back catalogue, I think. Next on the list is the All for the Game series by Nora Sakovic. Also, you might have heard of it just referred to as The Foxhole Court, which is the name of the first novel. This is another controversial one. Some people like it, some people don't. I have to put it on here because I read the whole thing over the course of like 3 days when I was in like 5th or 6th year. So I have to put it on here. And I'm still a fan, I'm not going to say I'm not. But it's not perfect. It focuses on a character called Neil, who has essentially been on the run from his mobster father since he was like 12. And that is the basis of the story. There's also a sport that doesn't really exist. It's like lacrosse, but more violent. And it isn't a happy series. A lot of terrible things happen. I would definitely recommend looking up trigger warnings if that's something that you might need. And there is issues with the series. Specifically, the one that stands out to me is the mental health rep in the series. It's not the most accurate, and it's kind of questionable, but the male-male romance that develops at the end of the series is a relationship that I personally am really interested in. It's a relationship that I really like because While they're both messed up characters, they understand each other and there's a lot of explicit consent, which is a nice change from a lot of novels. One of the characters is gay and the other one is kind of fandom-wide believed to be demisexual. He never uses the word himself, but the way he describes his sexuality does appear to be on the ace spectrum. There are also a bunch of strong female characters, and overall I think it's more of a guilty pleasure read. I don't really believe in guilty pleasure reads, but that's what you could call it. I've heard it referred to as like the book version of a sports anime with like gangsters. So, you know, who wouldn't be interested in that? And the last book on my list is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Alire Sands. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. This is what happens when you just read things and don't listen to things. I pronounce so many words wrong because I just read them. This is a friends to lovers, male-male romance about two teenage boys, and it's just one of the sweetest things I've ever read. It is also quite poetic, so again, if that's not something that you enjoy with flowery language, maybe avoid it. But the relationship is wholesome, and the main character, Aristotle, his kind of struggle to understand himself, not just in his sexuality, but his place in the world, is definitely a relatable experience and is overall just a nice coming of age novel with a sweet, happy ending. I also believe that there's going to be a sequel soon, so keep an eye out for that. And that is my list of queer book recs for this month of Pride. Thank you for bearing with me through a very long list, and also the terrible lighting that has been in my last couple of videos. I'm just going to play about with it and hopefully it'll work. I think this one looks nicer. Definitely looks like you're going to be able to see me and not just stare at me in a dark room, so that's positive. If you've made it to the end, I'd love it if you could like, comment, subscribe, come chat to me down in the comments or on my socials, which will be linked in the description box below. Let me know if you've read any of these or you plan to read them for Pride, or if you have any queer book recs for me. Thanks for watching and happy Pride. Bye!